Serhii, good morning. So this is what we're calling the morning workout. Do you do your morning exercise? Well, I've skipped it this morning. Yeah, me too, because amid the festival, this is difficult to do. But anyway, one of the things I really like under quarantine is the opportunity to do my morning exercises every morning. Right, so this is the workout we're getting today. You and I were part of the press editors team, right? We participated in editing for the festival. Alex, can you hear me? Yes, everything's good. I mean, there's nothing to confirm right now. So what time did you join the festival team? Because I remember being there. I was there only in January, so I joined closer to the end on the final stretch. And, you know, I didn't live through the entire experience you must have had. So can you share with us, what's your story? How did you end up on the team? And how many films have you watched throughout this period? Well, I joined in October. I was invited. I'm not sure how it's supposed to work properly. No, but I was invited too. Speaking about the films, I think I've watched about 300, including, if we include the short films, the ratio is probably 200 feature-length films and 100 short films since October. Is that since early October, late October? I won't be able to tell you because you don't remember, not because you're being confidential and everything. So on average, you were watching around 2 films a day, right? Well, the way it all started, it was pretty simple. I would watch several films a day, and then the IPSA festival arrives, one of the largest festivals of documentary film, and that's when the deluge starts. All of the directors who applied there, who had their films screened there, or who wanted to have their films screened there, they start applying for other festivals, including Docu Days, and you literally see the same number of films arriving in a single day that you used to have in, you know, that you used to watch until that point. So you mean that after the ITFA, after the Amsterdam Film Festival, there's a whole wave of films that are being sent in for the festival, and their number grows exponentially. And now you're dealing not with 2 films a day, but say 4 or 5 films a day to make it to the deadline. Yeah, that's pretty right. Yeah, so when I joined, you already had to watch 5 and 6 films per day. So I remember spending around, 20 days binge watching all of this stuff. So what are your impressions from after watching 200 films? I don't know. Are you now full of loathing for cinema? Do you hate cinema now? Have you had too much? Are you fed up? Did you experience cinema burnout? Well, frankly, I was at other film festivals. I was also at the film festivals physically, watching films screened there. So I had the additional burden of doing that. But frankly speaking, no, I haven't burnt out. I have actually uncovered for myself, even when you're watching a bad documentary, a documentary that is not in line with the format of the festival, it can still teach you. You're still learning something about the world. Perhaps it could have been done better, but you're still getting something. I think Kubrick used to say that he treated very nicely um, films that were being shown screened at the time or at cinemas or elsewhere, and he always said that even a bad film can teach you something. So you've almost literally repeated a quote by Kubrick. Well, I think he was commenting as a director, that as a director you could learn something, but as a rank and file viewer, there's different stuff that you learn. You find out, say, that in Laos, there are still lots of bombs needing demining. Yes, I had a film about explosive ordnance teams. By the way, female teams. No, there you go. So we're having the same experiences. Yeah, it was almost entirely without any voiceover, just a sort of meditative standing aside kind of cinema. It wasn't particularly brilliant, but one of the funny things, one of the interesting things that I would say it's always interesting to watch films when you watch films that allow you to be teleported all around the globe. And have you ever experienced watching an insincere film? What do you mean an insincere film? Well, a film that is not treating their issue honestly, that are manipulating facts, films where it becomes obvious. Well, of course, I've had those films. I can imagine. Well, I can remember a film that was focused on people struggling because of electromagnetic radiation, and they provided their own comments. They it wasn't clear how genuine and how frank they were when they were attacking the corporations. Say these corporations never had the chance to reply, so the representation of the issue was quite lopsided, and obviously a critical viewer would have the question of why am I having to listen to this? Why am I not able to hear the opposing side's story? Well, I think that's quite normal for a lot of documentary works. It's not particularly often that the opposing side has a chance to comment and react. But things can be taken out of context. Well, anyway, have you had any films that you found disgusting from an ideological point of view that you couldn't agree with? No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's difficult for me to try and remember anything like that. Right. So you've experienced about 200 films. I can say that I've only got up to the mark of 70, so that's almost 3 times fewer. What was the strangest thing you have had to watch, or maybe the most ugly thing, the most horrifying thing that you experienced? Something that didn't fit into your frame of perception. I mean, we agreed that we wouldn't talk about great films that have been recommended or haven't made it into the Docu Days program. How can you talk about things that are not on the program? And we'll have a separate conversation about those that we have represented. Well, one of the strangest films that I watched has made it into the competitive program, The Black Hole. And I was impressed by that because we're talking about these ephemeral things that the filmmakers were able to put into a film. It's about people who are talking about parallel lives under hypnosis, which is weird. It's weird to have it presented as a documentary film. So, do you think this is a documentary film? That's quite an interesting question because the film is available in the international competition section. So we will post the link, and we will also be able to see how the viewers receive it. When I was watching it, I was quite interested in knowing to what extent can this be viewed as a documentary film. I wouldn't say this is fiction. right? You wouldn't say that, but these are quite selected cases. This film focuses on, well, I mean, its main part focuses on the work of a hypnotherapist who works in Calcutta. And under hypnosis, she has people tell her about their previous lives. And as you remember, this film also has a prologue explaining why it is called the black hole. Yes, I remember the prologue is mythical, but let's not be spoiling all of that. Let's leave something for the viewers to enjoy as well. I will just remind everyone that the film is called Black Hole. Yes, and I can also add that this is an actual story. The Black Hole of Calcutta is a fully real story, but now it is being somewhat questioned. Not the actual event itself, but its scale, so to speak. So this is not entirely a mythological story. As soon as I saw the prologue, I went to check whether the actual events referenced took place, and it is considered that it did. Yeah, but you know, this just lays the foundation for the film, which saturates it a bit more with these mythological motives. It's got more of a mythology rather than reality. You know, you could be watching this film without the mythological framing, but it has been provided just to reinforce the superstitions that are common in the territory that's being depicted. But this directed me as the viewer to see this film as a post-colonial trauma that is being addressed, which is so it's exactly the prologue that invites me to see this film not as a documentary, not entirely as a documentary. Well, I mean, I'm not that much into drawing a line between fiction and a documentary because I feel it's going to be artificial anyway. Nevertheless, so that was one of the weirdest films, as you said. Yes, absolutely. Did you have anything that you would call the most horrible thing? You know, even obviously, even when I was watching, you sometimes feel like you're watching a bad TV film. That is not entirely horrible, but let's focus on something that was way beyond your frame of normality. No, to be honest, I've already forgotten all of that. I can't remember it right now. Yeah, it was like a nightmare to me that I'm happy to forget. No, but I can remember when I was just kicking off, I was reading a lot because in the systems where you pre-select the films and then you evaluate them and you leave your review, you also have the chance to see the reviews of the other people watching these films. I've gone through these reviews a lot because you note for yourself the interesting things that you might watch later, and then you end up not having enough time. But I remember this review on the film about mushrooms. I read that and I thought, wow, that would be interesting to watch. So I can mention that it's a film about not about hallucinogenic mushrooms. It's about mushroom pickers. Right. So let's now focus on what you and I have watched, what is now in the program, and what you can watch in the DocuDays programs. So, what among the things that you've watched you would you had recommended to the proper reviewers? I'm not even saying that's what has gone through into the program And what do you recommend?
I'd like to add that the way the situation works is that the selection committee does not decide the fate of the film. We have a system in place, and in order for the film to have a balanced opinion, the films are not assessed by the committee. And after that, we're saying to this higher power, so to say, as Serhii Spravsky, the selection committee that decides in their circle. And again, it's a group of people that watch the film, and they decide what the fate of the film will be. And this film tries to minimize the human factor, the personal factor, and that is why the program is so fantastic. That's what makes the program great. And one thing I'd like to talk about first is the New Jerusalem film, and it will be shown, it will be screened today. I think we can watch it now, can't you? No, it will be aired at 1800, but you told me about documentary cinema, and what makes this film peculiar is that Roman Hume and Yerema Malyshenko, the authors of this film, they are well-known artists. They have received the Pinchuk Art Prize Award, and the entire time they keep experimenting with cinema, and they create work on the brink between fiction and documentary films. So it looks like documentary films, people are waiting in line in front of the store, or we see a regular state institution where people are working, where people run about their errands. At the same time, all of these movements are choreographed, are pre-planned, there's scenography in place, and the scenography is quite rigid. So all the movements that seem random are actually meticulously planned. And in New Jerusalem, we can see this in action, where this film is less controlled than their previous works. And the question is, where does documentary film end and where does fiction film begin? Sergei. So I do not know, because as I have said, sometimes you can see this because we see things that cannot be filmed spontaneously, that cannot be captured spontaneously, things that can only be choreographed. That is why in New Jerusalem, I don't remember a lot of these things on screen, but this is a film within a film, because you watched it at the pre-selection process or during the pre-selection stage, right? I did not watch it back then. I only saw it a bit later, and to me, it was a revelation. I did not expect anything of the sort. And to me, New Jerusalem was not a film about forgiveness. It was not a film about pilgrims. It was a film about a film. It was cinema about cinema, because cinema is a massive illusion, an illusion we're all experiencing. That's what makes a film a film. And here, this is a movie about social rituals, or about the social imagination that makes social reality real. Things we believe become real. Yes, I think you summed it up perfectly. You practically took the words out of the director's mouth. It's exactly what he said when he was talking about faith as not just a feeling, but also a vision. To believe is to see. The people in the film, they see the miracle whether it exists or not, because they experience it that way regardless. And these analogies between cinema and Christianity are quite interesting. And as far as I remember, in cinema, you can rarely see these lines, these parallels between cinema and Christianity. If we are dealing with social reality, then there is nothing that exists or doesn't exist for that matter, because there's a stone. The stone exists regardless of whether we exist or not. In a way, this can be described as objective reality that doesn't depend on us, where social reality doesn't depend on outside circumstances. It is created and maintained by us alone. This is what the film is about. And this is about cinema as such. So how cinema as a glance, as a view, and which creates a social illusion that is powered by, that feeds on imaginations and feeds on the social reality it produces. And that's incredible. At the same time, you can watch this film as a film about the religious ritual. You can watch it in multiple ways, and among in Ukrainian films, that's the only thing that I actually stumbled upon. But you reminded me of these imaginary illusions about the film we've already talked about multiple times, the film Searching Eva, because it works with illusions, not only cinematic illusions, but also social media illusions. It feels like we know everything about a person. On the other hand, this person is non-existent for us in real life. We've talked about Searching Eve multiple times. First, it's a film that for us has been quite controversial. We've talked about it in context, which we should, of course, talk about when we were trying to discuss the topics for this session, the morning workout session. We said that we shouldn't talk about the things we didn't like, but we've already had this discussion, and I say that Searching Eva is not the film that I would assess highly if I happened to watch this film as the program. And when there's a lot of various perspectives, you select only the things that everyone values, that everyone appreciates as fine cinema. However, certain films like Searching Eve, they still sift through the filters, they pass through the filters. And I think that's also a positive phenomenon, because if that hadn't been the case, we would have only selected only the most abstract films. Searching, tell me please, what do you like about this film? This is a film part of Teen Spirit section, and I've already searched my answer. Number one, it's the non-linear storytelling. It's an online. You can view it online. You can tune into it at any moment. You can mix it yourself, cut it up yourself, because the film is not linear. It doesn't tell a story that has a beginning or an end. I don't think there's a limit on the amount of views you can have. I'm not sure. That's something you'd have to check with. If you can view it an unlimited amount of times, that means you can turn it on whenever you want to play it as many times as you want to play it. This is a Mobius strip film, so you can start out from any point, like a Pavich novel that you can read, pick up, open on any page and read it whichever way you like. But I don't think you can watch it backwards, though. Can you hear? That's the question. Technically, that's probably impossible. But of course, the main character, what makes her fascinating is that she expresses the zeitgeist to the fullest. She's both a manifestation and a complete lack of contemporary ideology. She's both a subject and a lack of subject. She decides who she is now. She keeps changing and escaping her ideologies, changing them like she would change masks. And this is, of course, fascinating because the world is becoming more and more ideologically oriented. However, there's a lot of opportunities to escape and avoid this, to choose the ideology, the image you like at this particular moment. And the third aspect is social media, because Eva is active in social media, and I think she tries to expose this to when the film shows social media. It's not particularly interesting, but this film finds a format to make this both interesting and relevant. To me, this is a movie that can resonate with a film that you can no longer watch, with the film Jawline. And Jawline, this is a dialogue about social media between Jawline and Searching Eva. So I'd like to say that it's a bit difficult to start talking about this because Searching Eva, I don't think really exposes social media. I think you can see a connection with her blogs, but her social media presence, her social media life, the digitalization of her life, I don't see this depicted in the film. I see her as a very analog kind of person who does change ideologies like she would change masks, but the extent to which this is perceived by it's perceived as a commodification of the individual, whereas she does not decide who she wants to become because she only expresses the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. However, when you start thinking about this, when I was watching this film, I felt a bit bored because it was just not interesting to me for the most part. Most films in general, I find interesting. Most documentaries I find interesting because you get to know new things. You see different kinds of people, and you understand that people are incredibly diverse. However, af- also after this film, whether you like it or not, I did not like Searching Eva, and then you start thinking that this film, it's a film about the times. It's a very contemporary film, and that is why what can make this film interesting, because for instance, if it was up to me, if including the film in the program was up to me, I'd probably vote for including it into the teen spirit section because I think it gives you the bigger picture. This is a film that teen spirit needs. This is a perspective that films like Jawline lack, because Jawline is a completely different movie. And you mentioned something very interesting about Searching Eva, that this is a film that allows the character to create her own narrative. Yes, so she is the co-author of the film. I read an interview with the authors where they said that during the first meeting, when Eva told them her life story, they were shocked. And after the director and the producer left, the authors decided they would definitely make this film, and they knew they'd never come back. They thought the director and the producer would never come back, but to her, this was not a gesture. Because she'd already told all these things in her social media. So for her, this was not an expose of something new. This already existed. This just existed in her various online manifestations. A good question is, to which extent is she the one creating this narrative? Or is this narrative compiled by the director and the sequence that... Do you know how the narrative was created? How was the film edited? I don't know how the film was edited, but they were trying to find a format, and I think they succeeded. Do you mean that it was a collaborative process? The authors, the film authors. So not Eva, exactly. Nonetheless, I think that Searching Eva is an interesting film for discussion, and it's a film that should be watched. I don't think that the amount of views this film can, times this film can be viewed is unlimited. So anyone older than 21, because there's an age restriction on the film, which is quite clear, seeing as the main character is modern in all the meanings of this word. We have a question from the audience. Which documentary film is most memorable? Which film would you recommend to your friends? I think let's start with you, because I already had my say. So what astonished me, and what I saw at the pre-selection stage in the films that made the program, I think what dazzled me the most was Utopia, which is a movie about a Norwegian boy in Indonesia in 2004, and he kept going back there for 50 years. It's an incredibly epic story about our life, about how the modernity of life today starts affecting us. And I don't know how the author managed to edit these 15 years into 90 minutes. That is incredible. When I watch a film like this, I am lost. I have no idea how this was achieved. And the other film about Venezuelan prisons, La Causa, The Cause, it's so I'll tell you, the film is about the largest prison in Venezuela called Leradeo, and there's 7,000 prisoners detained there, and they kicked the administration of the prison out behind the gates, and they only guard them from the outside. And I'm not spoiling this film for you because you can see this in the first 5 minutes. So people were able to smuggle weapons into the prison, and this was what allowed prisoners to kick the warden and the administration out and create their own microverse within the prison. And this is a completely realistic film. It's a totally different world, and you get to have a peek at this new world. I think there's these two. There was another film that I found that amazed me, but it's not part of the program, so I'm not gonna mention it. I think this isn't one film. It's quite difficult to talk about this. I'm generalizing. I love the docu art program because on the one hand, it talks a lot about art, and it talks a lot about general things, about human things. And a film that I'm watching right now is the Wintopia film by a Canadian director that is also telling about a different world. There's a girl whose father died, and she was looking at the archives, trying to, on the one hand, understand her father, to forgive her father for neglecting her, and on the other hand, to try to understand what he'd been searching for his entire life, the Wintopia he'd been searching for. The other film was Our Time Machine, about a puppet master, puppeteer, a theater director who is trying to find a way to understand, find common ground with his father, and this is made difficult by the fact that his father is suffering from Alzheimer's. And this is also a gentle, tender, and intimate story, a very humane story, a story that is universally understood. And Pure Art is a film less about memory and relationships. It's a film more about art, more about how freedom of expression is confronted by the somewhat authoritarian system of Belarus. It's not a somewhat authoritarian system. It's a country that is denying the existence of the coronavirus at this point, because recently they had a Subotnik, an outside kind of work session, a national Subotnik. And this is a very strange combination between finding this breath of freedom, finding the beautiful, and something that is quite ugly. And this is the pure art film. And this is an entire block. I also love the teen spirit section because the films there, they don't only talk about different things, they're also differ in form, which makes it interesting. So you don't only something you find something new out about the topic, but you can also understand more about cinema. So Searching Eva is by no means a typical documentary film.
Right, obviously, that is not a typical documentary. Right. Among the docu art, I watched. Yeah, thank you for the recommendation. I only watched Pure Art, and it's a fantastic film, I have to say. It is interesting. It is not too long. It is a properly funny film about the way a person can ask these big questions about art, about what art is. So from this point of view, this film is quite contemporary. And it is also about the way the person in a strictly normed society where everything needs to conform with requirements, since this society is very close to a totalitarian model, how in this society the person is seeking ways for self-expression, for self-liberation, and also for the liberation of those around the person. We seem to have a very little time left, so I will only provide one more recommendation, and then we'll take this to the end. We will be rounding this off. Of course, I will be suggesting to watch the entire Ukrainian program, DOCU Ukraine, because this year it's an interesting journey from west to east and east to west. And I think that Ukrainian documentary filmmaking hasn't really touched on these things before. And even if it has, they are being rethought from a new point of view. Right, I think we need to be drawing this morning workout to an end. And let's mention what we will be focusing on later today. At 1300, we're going to enjoy Soup with Filmmakers. We will have conversations with directors. Unfortunately, I need to look at this. Roberto Minervini, the director of the film What Are You Going to Do When the World is on Fire? And Tanya Koribanot. The club named Willpower. That's 1300, and tomorrow at 1200 we'll be joined by the friends of the festival, Veterano Brownie, baking brownies and sharing their renowned recipes. That's going to be much more useful than us, well, much more practical at least. Right, and finishing off, of course, I've got to mention that the festival is entirely free of charge this year. All of the expenses have already been made, all of the films have already been purchased, the platform has been established. So if you want to support the festival's operation, feel free to do that using our donate page. Right, and that's going to be amazing.